Okay, so first of all, I want to introduce Catherine Pharris Anderson, class of 97. She served as General Counsel of the Lytle Development Company since November of 2003, and she currently works part-time while raising 2 preschool boys, one with special needs. At Princeton, Catherine majored in history, was a member of the women's varsity swimming and diving team, and was first team All-Ivy and All-Eastern divisions. It's a long time ago, huh? Yeah. After law school, she was an associate in the Environment and Land and Resources Group at Lytle and Watkins. Catherine was class of 97 vice president and is a 15-year alumni schools committee member. She and her husband Matt and sons Tyler and Sean call Newport Beach, California home, where they are members of Mariners Church. Thank you, Catherine.
Good morning, and thank you for Princeton Union for putting this event on. I just knew that this existed when I was a student and when I was a young mom, although I guess I still am a young mom. I'm going to be 15 years out. The story you'll hear from me today is very different, obviously, than the story you'll hear from those 2 gentlemen because of the age and the life stage that I'm at. So it's just going to be a different journey. And the one thing that I would say to kind of start off my talk, that's the theme that sort of runs through it, is that you really need to trust God to direct you, to direct your career, your family, and your life path. Can you not hear me? Hardly hear me? Okay. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. That I've learned that God has taught me I really need to lean on Him and trust in Him to direct my career path and my family path and the choices that I make, because the choices I want to make are not the choices that He wants for me. And that is a work in progress. I'm still learning. But we've made some progress. So you heard a little bit of my background from Matt. And so I'll start off with sort of the more traditional route. Post Princeton, I went to law school, which was something that I had always wanted to do. I intended to practice criminal prosecution. I had a very bad experience at a maximum security men's federal penitentiary that quickly changed my mind, and ended up taking a series of land use courses, which I, much to my total surprise, fell in love with, and that's the direction that my legal career went. So I was an environmental attorney, specializing in land use and development in Southern California. And as you would expect, what comes with being a young associate at a major firm is a lot of very long hours and a lot of sacrifices for my career and friendships. And so Lytle sort of, it was a wonderful experience, but it ate up a lot of my time in that. And so the one thing that I was really careful and cautious to guard against was the areas of my faith that were really growing. And one of those was a Wednesday night small group that I was in Manhattan Beach, which is where I lived. And it probably took me 45 or 50 minutes to get home from work to go to that. And it was Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock, and everyone I worked for knew it. The partners that I worked for knew it, the associates I was on teams with knew it, my legal secretary knew it, and that was the one time that was secret. And what I found, and because at the beginning of doing this, I was a little nervous about how it would be received. But what I found was if I put my foot down and said, this is my sacred time and I'm leaving at 7 on Wednesdays and there was nothing you can do to make me stay, they respected it and everyone knew it. And I was encouraged by that. I think that helped kind of embolden me a little bit to not put my faith second or put other people's needs in front of that area of my life. And my legal secretary, she was a wonderful woman, but she was definitely not a Christian. And she would copy my notes and read through them and ask me questions. And it was a really interesting way to witness my faith to people in a way that I didn't ever anticipate and that I didn't think would be as impactful. But it really was, and I still run into people occasionally from Lytle, when I haven't worked there now in a decade, who talk about it or ask me questions about it. Where are you going to church or what are you doing? So that was really an interesting way to start to integrate my faith into my work environment. But soon thereafter, I was at Lytle for 3 years. And soon thereafter, our life kind of took an unexpected shift, and I went to work for my family. I took a personal leave from Lytle to work for my family because of some medical problems within my and that was a challenging change, and it wasn't one I saw coming. But now I see God's hand in it because my family's in real estate development, and my land use background as an attorney was exactly what they needed. And so I went to work for them, and after the 6 months, at this point I was dating my now husband, and I was set to go back to Lytle, and he said, if you want to go back, I will support you, but if you really want to go back, we need to ask why. You need to analyze, what is motivating you and what your choices are. And so I stayed and worked for my family and really enjoyed it and worked the same kind of work that I had done. But I didn't really know where it was going to lead me, and I had a lot of anxiety about, when you work for your family, it's a different experience, and there's a new nuance that comes with that. So I had to just trust God that He had put me there for a reason. And indeed, He had, and a few years later, after we were married, we had our first son. He is 4 now, and he is a wonderful kid. But being a mother and balancing a career was a whole different level of challenge than I had anticipated. I knew it would be hard, but it was really hard. And so I came back to work, and I intended to come back part-time, which is what I did. And so for the first year and a half of his life, I worked 3 days a week. And it was a really good balance. It was a great transition for me to still be in the working world, but really be with my son. And then our second son was born. And that was a whole nother level of challenge. And at the time when our second son was born, our first was diagnosed with high-functioning autism. And so I really had to step back from work. And at that point, I had a lot of career opportunities that were opening to me. I was starting to think about other things that I could do. I was on the national board for NAIOP, which is the biggest office and industrial real estate organization in the country. And so I was really excited about the direction things were going, and God just had to say, this is not the plan I have for you, and you need to trust that this is not the plan, and walk away from it willingly and focus on what you need to focus on. And that was hard. It was very, very hard. However, it ended up being probably the biggest blessing that He has given me, because I am the most content that I've ever been. And I feel that I have more influence on people and their faith, and I'm a better example and role model than I was in the working world. Oddly, by coming closer into my family, I feel like my sphere of influence has actually increased, because I'm now exposed through I do a lot of other things. I do ministry work at our church with young families, and I work with different nonprofit organizations, but my kids are my #1 focus. And I really thought that would be a limiting experience. And at the beginning, it's a little, when you're home just changing diapers, it's pretty limiting. But soon that changes. And so now I feel really confidently that God has put that roadblock in my life at the time I thought was as really an opportunity. So one of the most interesting things I've had is there's a ministry that exists called MOPS, and it's the Mothers of Preschoolers. And it's not a type of organization I ever thought I would be working with or involved with when I graduated from Princeton, ever. But I love it, and I work with all the small group discussion leaders, so I basically help facilitate all the small groups that are within that. And my job is to spiritually mentor these women so that they can spiritually mentor the other women that are with them. And that has been more rewarding than I ever thought possible. And I have found that although, you read statistically, the majority of people who become Christians do so by the age of 18, perhaps in college, and then there's a significant shift. And I have found that young women with young families are a very right group, because they have these young children and they want to instill spiritual truth in them, and they want to give them guidance and moral guidance, and many of them did not get it from their own parents, and they regret it, and they miss it. So I have so many friends who I very hesitantly invited to come to MOPS for the first time, who came and I thought was my end of friendship. But they came, and now they're in leadership, and many of them have become Christians, and their children are going to church, and their husbands are starting to come, and it's been a really interesting, then that's what I mean, I feel like my sphere of influence has changed. It's very different than I thought it would be, but it's more real and large in other ways than I ever imagined that it could be. So I think that has been extremely rewarding, and I think also learning that my spiritual gifts are faith and administration and teaching has been very helpful too, because I can use all those things in raising my children and working in ministry areas, more local ministry areas at the moment, but we'll see where that ends up heading. But evangelism is not my gift. And I kind of felt like I needed to be a little more assertive about inviting people to things or sharing my faith with people, and I don't do that well. I don't feel comfortable doing it. And it feels forced, and it feels uncomfortable to the people I would talk to about it. So I no longer have a sense of responsibility that is the direction I'm supposed to head. I now feel very confidently that I can live my life the way that God has open doors and walk through them and pay attention to his voice without the sense of the burden that I have a job that I have to do for him. I'm doing the job just by living my life and having people see me. So I think for the young alums that are here and the young women that are here who are just charting their path post Princeton, you need to have faith and trust in God. You need to rest on Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future. Because he does, and he will, and it may look very different than what you expect it to look like. And it may look very different than all of your friends. I was going through last night my 8 friends that I'm the closest to from Princeton. And I am the only one who is, well, I still work. I do work part-time, but I am the only one that is really, truly home with my kids most of the time. And it was hard. It's sometimes hard for me to get my hands around that. This is not what I expected. But it is the best thing for me. It's the best thing for my family. And I think it is the best thing for the influence that God has placed in front of me. So I just encourage you to trust God, that your life may look different than you expect, and to be confident in the choices you make, because there is a reason He's putting those things in your path. And He will bless you for it, and He will bless others through listening to Him.